Thank you. So how many folks saw the guy walking around in the dark suit and thought, oh, he must be from Washington? So this is our standard uniform that we have to wear when we work in DC. And you could say that cliche about, I'm from Washington, I'm here to help. But actually, today has been great for me because what I've heard and what I've seen here today, I think what we've all seen and heard, is going to allow me to go back to Washington and actually help, hopefully, help convey the messages. And that's sort of my goal today. I'm going to talk a little bit about, I was asked to talk about, first of all, thank you very much for letting me come and inviting me. But I'm going to talk a little bit about what we know, what we think we know about parental attitudes towards learning and after school, toward after school in general, but learning and after school also, as well as sort of policymaker attitudes. Those are kind of hard to pin down, and even a little bit on educators, because there was a survey that came out last year we'll talk about. So, but my goal is really to share that and then talk a little bit about those perceptions, and then to talk about and sort of, I had written inspire, but really implore you to share what we all do, what you all do. Share your story with everybody and anybody, but particularly, as Jennifer said before, the advocacy piece of this, whether it's the media or whether it's elected officials or whoever, we need to get the word out there about the amazing things that are going on in this space. And so I'm very excited to have the YouTube videos. There he is up there, to be able to point to those. I already have like 6 people in my mind that when these are up, so let me know when they're up. Keep people that work on the Hill that I can say, you really need to go and look at this particular video because this is what I'm talking about. This is what happens. All right. So what's resonating with parents and policymakers around learning and after school? The question, the answer really to that question continues to be, it keeps kids safe. So when we talk to policymakers on the Hill, when we talk to parents, and there's sort of a body of information that I'm going to draw on, the daily 2.5 years of working with congressional staff members on the Hill, but also the America After 3 survey, where we did a household survey 2 years ago of 30,000 households and asked, among other things, what parents thought about after school. Were they satisfied? What some of those questions. So I'll get into some of that. And then also focus groups. I'm going to talk a little bit about a series of focus groups we did back in August and September last year to kind of delve deeper into some of these issues. And then a couple other surveys and random information. So this is where I would say let's do the numbers and put up a nice slide with all the numbers and graphs. But I decided not to do that and put up some pictures of kids instead. So I'm not going to read through all these, but I'm just going to give you a flavor. And some of this might be old for you all, but from the America After 3 survey, 9 in 10 parents were satisfied with their after-school program, so 90%. We know that there's great public support for after school out there. 9 in 10 parents also agreed that, quote, some type of organized activity or place for children and teens to go after school every day that provides opportunities to learn, that they felt that that was important and mattered. What's interesting, though, is beyond the sort of safe place for kids, which is important, and we saw that a couple times today. It always comes up, whether it's preventing violence and what that means to have a safe place for kids. But beyond that, a couple of things that came up where people sort of filled in the blank. We saw physical activity as one, opportunities for physical activity that came out, and then helping their child succeed in school resonated. Educators are important. So last year, the National After School Association and Champions came out with a survey of national representation of superintendents and asked superintendents what they thought about after school. And it's good to know what school officials think, obviously. So 82% of school superintendents found that, make sure I get the wording right, found that before and after school programs offerings improved learning and social interaction are highly successful at supplementing in-class curriculum. So they had a whole range of things. Over 90% thought they improved in-classroom academic performance. 92% thought they improved in-classroom engagement, helping with homework, improving test scores. 86% felt like after school improved test scores. And then in there as well was also a little bit on social interaction. And then I'm going to come back to that because that's a piece I want to spend some more time on. But it's an election year, so last sort of numbers, I promise this won't be all numbers. It's election year this year again. So I'm going to throw in election eve polling that we did from past election. 76% of voters said polled in an election eve poll, so the after-school programs are, quote, an absolute necessity for their community. So bottom line is here, there is the support out there for this, as you all know. But it really is around still, after 10 years or so of significant federal support for these programs, it really is still around keeping kids safe. And that's important, and we don't want to lose that. But we're also really trying to make people understand in Washington and elsewhere that it's not just about keeping kids safe. That's important. We don't want to lose that. But there is this whole world of learning and engaging learning that's going on after school. And that's why the learning and after school principles are really important to us, because it does allow us to point to something and say, this is what we're talking about. These are the essential elements that quality programs have. That it goes beyond simply, as one Hill staffer said to me at one point early on, well, you mean you're talking about babysitting, right, and childcare. That's not the case, and we're seeing that less and less. People are understanding that there's much more to this than that. So the focus groups were really interesting. I don't know if Steve's still here. He sat in on one of them, and one of the things that came out of these parent focus groups, they were in 8 cities. Portland, Ohio, Georgia, around the country. There's these companies that you can hire, which we did, that do this for a living. So very interesting. Well, you can say, I want a group of independent Latina moms, and they'll give you a group of 40 independent Latina moms to do a focus group with. Or we did, with Republican voters, seniors, grandparents, different folks, and some of the same messages resonated with all these people. Some of the same things came up in all these conversations. And that's what I wanted to share with you a little bit. Wow, that looks really big from up here. So one of the key messages that resonated, obviously was keeping kids safe. That was a big one. But we did this thing where we described sort of a comprehensive quality after-school program, really in sync with the learning and after-school values. And the response was overwhelming that, yes, that's what we want. That's great. Everyone thought that was the ideal. Engaged learning, hands-on experiential learning, the project-based learning, all those sort of buzzwords which described to folks, they were all over it. But then they all said, yeah, but that doesn't exist. And one comment was, I think it was the focus group from Ohio, was, well, that's like a purple unicorn, just as the purple unicorn. It sounds really good in real, but it doesn't exist in real life. Weird to me because I guess purple unicorns are sounding good. But the thing is, it does exist, not purple unicorns. But the programs that you all run every day and work on, and that's really the challenge, is conveying that to people to say, we are making we are doing things differently. We are making some progress. We are engaging kids at a whole different level during this space. So more on the focus groups. I wanted to highlight one of the things that came out too that was interesting was this whole idea of social interaction. This came up again in the superintendent's poll, and that came up, has come up in the past, and again it kind of relates to keeping kids safe. But the idea that after school, we want after school programs. They're important. We need to support them as taxpayers because they teach kids how to interact with other kids and with people. We'll scratch the surface on that, and we questioned some of the folks in these different groups. And it was, if they don't have that, then they're not learning that in school because they're focusing on their studies, which is good. But then when they go home, they're not talking to anybody. They're on their own. They're in front of a screen. They're on social media or they're texting, and that's how they interact with people. And we're really concerned that our young people today are not learning how to talk and communicate with other people, how to work as a group, any of these things. And although that's always been a theme, I think, over the last 10 years of polling and focus groups, it really kind of struck home, I think. And part of this, it also sort of related to the conversations, a couple of these groups going into sort of cyberbullying and how programs are a way to get kids away from the screens and try to tackle and prevent cyberbullying, which was interesting and important. And it could have had to do with these focus groups are going on when that was a big, major media issue at the time.